Columbine High School Massacre by Lauren Case
and Corey Rodriguez.
Have you ever looked around the school and wondered why we have security cameras stationed at the end of every hallway? Maybe you've also found yourself wondering why we have an officer on hand each and every day at our school. Some of us ponder these facts, while many others believe this is a method of trying to scare us into behaving. However, very little do we know that a deeper and darker meaning lies behind these small safety precautions we take for granted every day.
On April 20th, 1999, in Littleton, Colorado, one of the most gruesome school shootings in America occurred at Columbine High School, leaving several dead and several more wounded. The event brought awareness to the effects of bullying and school shootings, while also having a huge effect on the way schools around the U.S. are ran today.
The Columbine school shooting impacted history by helping to heighten security in schools. To better understand the events that occurred on that awful day and how it had an impact on schools today, I will better explain the backgrounds of the shooters and their preparations for the attack, as well as the events that unfolded that day and the aftermath and impact of the tragedy.
To the common eye, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, the shooters, seemed to be your everyday average teenage boys. Both were seniors who loved to toy around with computers, play video games, and were generally very intelligent. Neither held much of a criminal record besides a small break into a van, which both had to attend a juvenile program for, and were respectful and attentive throughout their whole time spent there. It was never expected that such a vicious crime would or even could be performed by the pair.
However, although the boys seemed to lead a normal life, it was reported that they endured a lot of bullying and found it hard to fit in. With a closer examination, it could be seen that something was a little off regarding the two. For example, Michelle Fox, who shared a creative writing class with one of the boys, explained how he always wrote about death and made it very apparent that they hated everything about the school. Along with this eerie report, it was also later discovered in a journal by Eric that he had a very strong hatred for many small things, such as people who mispronounced words or liked Star Wars. It was also reported that both boys had a strong hatred for colored people, Christians, and athletes. With such a strong hatred and anger for anything and everything, it could have been seen that the boys weren't quite so average after all.
After looking over all of the evidence left behind, it was estimated that the boys had been planning the attack for about a year prior to its date. Through map plans and internet browsing history, it was found that the boys had carefully planned each aspect of the attack, from searching for bomb-making tutorials to scoping out certain places to plant the bombs at specific times to kill the most students. When the morning arrived, both boys knew exactly what to do. When the boys first arrived, they entered the cafeteria and planted the bombs concealed in duffel bags in spots they had mapped out and set the timers for each bomb. They then proceeded back to the vehicles awaiting the explosion.
Fortunately, the bombs never detonated, saving approximately 488 students' lives. However, after realizing the bombs weren't working, the boys formulated a plan too, which involved planting bombs in an open field to serve as a distraction to the police when they exploded. This allowed the boys more time to equip themselves and begin the massacre.
The rampage began almost immediately as the boys made their way to the school. Their first destination was the cafeteria, and on their way, they had already begun shooting students sitting outside, immediately killing one. Many students within the building and at further distances believed it was a senior prank, so many did not try to escape at first. However, as the boys entered the cafeteria, it would very soon be discovered that this was no prank.
Many students recalled several bombs going off all around the room while the boys repeatedly and excessively shot at students at the same time. As the day progressed, the boys had moved around many different areas of the school, continuing to shoot and throw bombs at students and teachers, reportedly cheering and laughing as they did so. Students held up signs in the window trying to help explain what was going on to the growing number of deputies outside, while the boys continued their rampage.
Although many had been injured and a few killed beforehand, no other area was more viciously handled than the school's library. Upon entering the library, the boys ordered all jocks to stand up and told them they were all going to be killed while screaming numerous times, "This is revenge," said Brittany Bullard, who hid under a table. Another student, Evan Todd, who was a sophomore at the time, explained how a colored student was singled out and had been told by the boys that they did not like colored people before shooting the student in the face.
The shooters also snuck up on a girl frantically praying under a table and mockingly yelled out peekaboo before shooting her in the neck. Besides just singling out certain types of people, the boys also opened fire on other students. Bree Pasquale, a junior at Columbine during the attack, explained that one of the boys held a gun to her head and told her he was doing this because people had picked on him last year. Fortunately, Bree was able to escape but had to endure being splattered with other victims' blood as she did so.
After the boys had finished in the library, they wandered around the school, throwing around bombs and shooting randomly, seeming to get bored. They then returned back to the library, where they took a few more shots at deputies before committing suicide, ending the massacre.
Although the rest of the students were brought to safety, the injured healed, and the school was repaired, the gruesome events which took place on April 20th, 1999, along with the lives lost on that day, are not forgotten. The end result of the tragedy left 21 injured, 12 students, and 1 teacher dead. The stories of the deceased live on through books written in remembrance and through the media. Songs were also written regarding the victims, such as the song called Cassie by Flyleaf, which followed the story of one of the victims, Cassie Bernal, who was asked by the shooters if she believed in God, knowing that if she said yes, she would be killed, but still chose to stand up for her beliefs.
Although the tragedy had already occurred and couldn't be taken back or fixed, America began to realize that this tragedy could have been prevented and can still be prevented in the future. Since Columbine, schools have gone to extreme measures to assure the safety of students and staff. Many schools across the U.S. have installed cameras, required IDs for all students to have on them, and have stationed police officers around the school to ensure more safety within the school.
In bigger cities, metal detectors have been installed in some schools, while in others, backpacks have even been banned. In many schools, lockdown drills are held to help teach children what to do in a situation similar to Columbine. Many of these safety precautions occurring across the U.S., as you can see, are also present here at our school. Even many miles away from Wisconsin, Columbine has affected and impacted the small town of Merrill and our school's security today.
Ever since the Columbine shooting, our nation has worked hard to get the strong security and safety that our schools need, and even continue to find new measures for security that can be useful for the present and the future. The tragedy that occurred in Littleton, Colorado, on April 20th, 1999, devastated our nation, but the lives of the deceased and the injured would not go unnoticed. Thanks to them, we were able to open our eyes to see the real problem behind the Columbine shooting, and the school security needed to be increased. Thanks to them, many students' lives are now being saved every day, and the devastating tragedy that broke our nation's heart has a very strong chance of not reoccurring again. We owe it to the 13 deceased and the 21 injured victims for our safety today.
Thank you.